guys. Hi, Peyton.
Hi.
Okay, what are we going to make today?
A little mini doll bag.
A little mini doll bag, a little backpack. All right, let's try it on her. So, she has some interesting hair.
Yes.
We're just going to move that off to the side. All right, so just a little doll bag for your American Girl doll or any of your little dollies. So, we're going to show you how to make that today, right?
Yep.
All right. So, set her off to the side over there. All right, so if you got a kit from me, what you will have are 2 pieces for the main part of the bag, 2 pieces for the lining. You will have, not that, you will have 2 tabs for the string to go through at the bottom, and then you will have 2 pieces of rope to string it so that you can cinch it shut, along with the safety pin that you will use to string the rope through at the end, okay? So those are the pieces, not too complicated at all. All right, so what we're gonna do, will you put Miss Lily off to the side over there for me?
Yes.
All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna get started with the main pieces, okay? Now you will notice, goodness sakes, or if you could take note, that there are a couple of notches that I have cut out for you to help us along the way. So the very first step that we will be doing is sewing these tabs into place. So if we look onto your fabric, you're gonna grab 1 piece of your main fabric, and there's a little notch. It's 1 inch from the bottom corner, okay? So we have the notch 1 inch from the bottom. I'm going to take this tab piece, fold it in half, and lining the raw edges up together. So the raw edge of your fabric along with the raw edge of this twill tape, we're going to line it up so that the bottom of the twill tape is lined up to the notch, okay? So hopefully you can see that. So we just want it to be, the bottom of that twill tape to be 1 inch from the bottom piece of the fabric. I'm going to put 1 pin in place, okay? And now what we will be doing is just sewing this in place. Now we have one other side to do. I will let Peyton do this side. So Peyton, you're going to fold that in half. Then line up the raw edges just right above, right above that notch. So 1 inch from the bottom corner, okay? And then I want you to put, are you comfortable pinning?
I guess.
You can try it. Go ahead and put a pin in there to hold it in place. And I know this looks backwards because you will eventually want it to stick out, right? But in order to get it started, we have to start with it pointing inward. So this is what it will look like. You're going to have your 2 pieces of twill tape folded to the inside. And we're going to go sew this right now. We're going to sew it using the edge of the presser foot. So for us, that's at 1/4 inch. We're going to go sew that first, okay? Let's go to the sewing machine. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is make sure that our needle is in the correct position. So for us, that means we need to move it to where?
0, 1.
0, 1. So go ahead and move that to 0, 1. Now our needle is in the middle. And what I want you to do, we're going to line this up so that the edge of that twill tape is lined up to the edge of the presser foot. And for this time, I think it's okay to just go ahead and sew, leave that needle in place and just sew over top of that needle. This is what we call basting. So you're just going to sew it straight. You don't need a back stitch or anything, okay? We just want to hold it in place. We had to go in a little fast, huh? All right, we probably shouldn't go that fast next time. Go ahead. All right, but you still did a pretty good job, even going super fast. Okay, go ahead and line up this side with the edge of the presser foot. I put you in slow now, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so she sewed her tabs in place. So right now we're going to leave them tucked inside, right? They're going to be pointing towards the inside. But once we get it all done, they will end up getting flipped out like that, okay? But for right now, we're going to leave them just like that. Now it's time to put our 2 main pieces pretty sides kissing. And you are going to want to pay attention if there's any direction. You need to keep an eye on that. So we're going to flip it so it's pretty sides kissing. And now at this point, I'm going to turn it around so that it's facing us correctly, but just so you know, the tabs that you just sewed, that is the bottom, okay? So we're gonna turn it around, and then the top has 2 notches. So there are 2 notches cut out at the top. That is to help us with the casing, because when we go to sew this, we have to leave a hole through the main fabric so that we have a place for the rope to go through, okay? So that's why those notches are there, to help us know where to leave the hole for the rope of the bag so that it can cinch shut. So first thing I'm gonna do, line them up. I'm gonna find the notches that I made for you. I'm going to put a pin in here because when we see a pin, we know that means something's up and we need to stop. So I'm just gonna put a pin in each spot that I marked, okay? And the same thing over here, Peyton. Do you wanna put your pins on that side? So if you've ever sewn with me, you know that when I use pins, it's usually for a reason, because I like to use those sewing clips as much as possible. So we're going to put the pins in there so that we are reminded to stop, so we won't sew in between those 2. But she's pinning that. I'm going to grab our sewing clips because I haven't gotten those yet. So go ahead and pin that. Perfect. Okay. So now she has her 2 spots. Like I said, we're going to sew at the top, leave a hole in between those 2, and then we'll sew all the way around. So what I want you to do now is get your sewing clips. I want you to finish clipping. I'll kind of show them. We're going to finish clipping the 2 sides and the bottom on that side. We need the very top open, okay? So the part with the 2 notches on each side, that's the top. Go ahead and clip that. Move that closer to you. Okay, so now it's time to go sew. We're going to sew where the clips are, okay? All right. Okay, so we're at the machine now, and the first thing that we need to do is mark our seam allowance, okay? So for us, or for this pattern, we are doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance. If you're unsure of where the 1/2 inch mark is on your sewing machine, go ahead and grab a little tape measure or a ruler and measure a 1/2 inch from the needle. And then go out. So it's a 1/2 inch from the needle to that blue tape. And then also on the bottom, because we're going to be doing a pivot on the corners, we want to do a 1/2 inch from the needle to the bottom there. Okay, so where that corner meets is going to be our pivot point. Okay, now one thing that we like to do is use a magnet. Okay, so I'm also going to put a magnet over here on the side, and that will just help Peyton keep it lined up. Okay, so now this is kind of the tricky part, because we need to sew a 1/2 inch here. And I do want you to back stitch because we want it to be secure. So you're going to start sewing, do a back stitch, and then go down to that pin, that first pin, and do another little back stitch, and then go forward. Then we're going to take that pin out, and we'll move forward to the second pin, okay? So we're not going to sew right here. You're going to start sewing again right here at this pin, go 3 stitches forward, do your back stitch, 3 stitches backwards, and then you're going to sew. You're going to sew straight down. When you get to that corner, we can do a pivot. Get here, do another pivot, and we're going to sew. And then again, once you get to that pin, you're going to do a back stitch. We're going to lift up our needle, don't sew right here, and then just sew this last little 1/2 inch, okay? So get you lined up, and you can keep those pins in. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Go ahead and start. Do your 3 stitches and a back stitch. And sew to that first pin. And stop. Do a back stitch. You can take that pin out too if you want. Perfect. Go ahead and stop there. Yep, go ahead and take it off. So pick up your needle and your presser foot. Yep, both of them. And take it off to the side and cut that thread. Perfect. Now you're going to start again. We can take that pin out. We don't need it anymore. You're going to start now on that second pin, okay? Go ahead and line it up there. And now that you're starting there, you can actually take the pin out if you want, or you can keep it if it helps remind you with the back stitching. Okay, so now you're getting close to that second pin, right? It's kind of hard to see, but go ahead and go up to that pin right there, and then you're going to do a back stitch when you get there, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so she sewed all around there, and we left the hole, right? So go ahead and do the honors and flip that pretty side out so we can see it. All right, and poke out your corners. Perfect. All right, so now I'm gonna just kind of work these corners out a little bit. Before we're all done, we will get our tube turner and poke them out even better, but right now, just so you can get an idea, looks pretty cute. I love it. Okay, so this is gonna be, we're gonna put this off to the side. This is our main fabric. We're gonna set that off to the side for right now, and it's time to work on our lining, okay? So for Peyton's lining, she just says polka dot, and I want you, Peyton, to line this up, pretty sides kissing, and we are gonna clip around the sides. So it's just like before, we need to leave the top open so that we can put things inside it. But what I'm gonna have you do, move that up a little bit. So the bottom is the side that's closest to her right now. And I want you to clip the two sides and the bottom. And leave the very top open, okay? Now, you're gonna start clipping, but I should probably point out one thing really quick. Sometimes I just have you clip all the way around and then I go back and add pins, which is probably what I'll do right now. But we are going to leave a hole in the bottom of this. So just a hole that's like big enough for our fingers to get through. Let's measure it. It's like 3 inches. So I have my pins next to me. She's gonna put her last clip in. All right. So now she has clips on the two sides and a couple on the bottom because we still want a couple clips there. But right next to those clips, we will put a couple of pins because once we go to add the lining and the main fabric together, we're gonna have to do a little trick, okay? This is the part where everyone thinks I'm crazy, but I promise it works. So where those two pins are at the very bottom, we are gonna leave a hole right there, okay? So put the pins in there so you can remember that we will not sew right there, but we will sew the sides and we'll do our pivot turn. Then we'll come over here, do another pivot turn and come back up. So let's go ahead and we're gonna sew this doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance as well, okay? Okay, so now we're at the machine. We're gonna take away that first clip, just we don't need it. We're gonna line it up at the top there. Line it up so that you're at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Go ahead and start.
Or do I back stitch?
You do want to back stitch, yep. So Peyton, now you're getting close to that pin, so you're going to do three more stitches probably. You're going to get close to that pin and then I want you to do a back stitch, okay?
Okay.
Then stop. Okay, so I want you to lift up your needle and your presser foot and take that off. Okay, so now we're gonna start winding up here. Take away that hook. Okay, so now you're lined up to that second pin. I'm actually gonna take that pin away. Go ahead and do 3 stitches forward and then 3 stitches backwards. So now I want you to go towards the top of that fabric and I want you to do a back stitch, okay?
Okay.
So we're going to finish it off. Remember, we're not sewing the top, so we only pivot this thing twice. Do your back stitch. Perfect, and then go forward all the way off. Awesome! Okay, so she has her lining all sewn up, so you left the top open, and then there's a hole at the bottom, okay? Alright, so now the next part, Peyton already remembered, we're going to take our main piece, the one with the tabs, our pretty decorative piece, we are going to slide this inside your lining. So your main piece is pretty side out, your lining is staying wrong side. So we will see the seams on the lining piece, but not that one. So the doll bag is easy, it just kind of fits on my hand. I can just slide it on in. Okay, so what we're basically doing is you're lining up the 2 pieces, you're lining up the raw edges, pretty sides kissing, okay? So the way to do it is by sliding the main piece inside of the lining. And what I'm doing first is I am lining up the 2 side seams, okay? So the 2 side seams are here. And I always clip those first. And if we can open up the seam allowance so it's flat, then that's great. But if while you're sewing it happens to fold on top of each other, it's fine. Don't stress out about it too much. I don't want you to stick your fingers in there or anything to try to keep it from closing up. So we're gonna line that up. Now, if you're doing this and they don't fit very well, like maybe the lining is a lot bigger than your main piece, or vice versa, if they just don't line up to be the same size, that probably means that your seam allowance got off while you were sewing. Like maybe it got really skinny or got really fat, so it makes them so they're not the same size anymore, okay? So if that happened, I would probably take the few minutes to fix that. So either making one of them bigger or one of them, seam ripping and making it smaller, however you want to do it, but that's why. So if they're not matching it very good, it's just because your seam allowance got off. Or I cut it totally crazy, something like that, but it's probably the seam allowance. So now I have those 2 clips. Peyton's just gonna add, this is pretty small, so we'll probably just do one in the middle, if you wanna add a clip right here in the middle. Okay, and then we're gonna add one on this side. All right, so we just have a few clips around the top. Now we are going to go sew all the way around the circle, okay? So that we're gonna keep it separate. We don't wanna sew it so that it'll be flat, because then you can't get anything inside of it. So we're gonna sew it into the circle, okay? So we're gonna go line that up for you, okay? All right. Okay, so now we are gonna sew the bag all the way around the top, right? So I'm going to line it up. And I kind of do it, I say upside down, because I'm going to line it up so that the bag winds up with the presser foot, but then the extra part that you're waiting to sew is kind of on the top, okay? So what we're going to do is sew all the way around, a 1/2 inch from the edge, and you just kind of have to move the bag, rotate the bag as you are sewing. So you can move that green clip out of the way.
You do our back stitch.
You do want a back stitch, yep. So start sewing. 1, 2, 3, then do your back stitch. All right, so now you're getting close to where you started. So once you get to where you started, overlap it at a couple of stitches. So go like 2 more stitches. 1, 2, then stop. Now I want you to do your back stitch. 1, 2, 3, and go forward 3 stitches. And stop. Pick up your needle and your presser foot. Got some extra strings that wrapped around your presser foot there. There you go. A lot of strings there, huh? Okay, so now you got it attached at the top. There you go. Okay, so she sewed all the way around the top at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now we get to find out why in the world we left a hole, right? All right, so you're gonna pull your main fabric out through the hole. So that's gonna get tucked inside here. Let me show you. Those are your corners. You're gonna poke those out on each side. Okay. And now we'll grab our tube turner here in a moment. But what we're gonna do now is we have to sew that hole shut. Okay. So you can iron it if you need to. A lot of times it's pretty pressed well anyway, that you can just grab your clips and clip it together. Whoopsie. And clip it together in a couple spots. And we're just gonna sew just the hole shut. You don't have to do the whole bottom. We're just gonna sew just right here using the edge of the presser foot so we're closer to the edge, okay? And then we're almost done. Then we'll get to tuck our lining inside our bag. Okay? All right. Okay, so now we're gonna sew just that hole shut, right? So for Peyton, she's a little bit newer to sewing, so she's going to use the edge of the presser foot as her guide. If you are more advanced, you can move it closer, so you can sew really close to the edge. But we're just going to line it up to the edge of the presser foot. Her hole starts right there, so we'll start her just a little bit before that. And Peyton, you do want to start and then back stitch, and you are going to sew all the way until you get right to that green clip there. Do your back stitch. All right, so she sewed the hole shut, right?
Yep.
So now, next part, we have to tuck the lining inside, right? So this part sometimes gets a little tricky, but it fits my hand so cute. All right, so I'm just poking out the corners right now, so it's square. The cool part about it is once you start putting stuff inside of it, it kind of works itself out. Okay, so now it looks like a bag, right? We have to put, so there's one more step. Okay, so I'm going to actually go iron this just so it's nice and pressed right around the top of that. And then the last step is going to be to sew the stitch for the casing, okay? So the hole is right here. And we are going to sew a line right underneath it, okay? So if I grab the bag that's done, maybe you can see it. Oh goodness. So there's a stitching line right underneath the hole, okay? So we are going to just sew a stitching line all the way around so that there is a casing for the rope. So that'll be the next step. Hey guys, okay, so you may notice our clothes are different, huh?
Yes.
We didn't quite get our bag done yesterday, so we are here to finish it off. Okay, so where we left off is we had ironed the crease. So we just went and ironed the crease around the top so the lining is stuck down and the top of the bag is folded nicely. So now the last step that she has to do before we put this string through is to sew the casing. Okay, so what we're going to do is that hole that we left, so there's a hole right here where I'm putting my finger. Right underneath that hole I'm going to put a pin, okay? Because what we want to do is we want to sew just right underneath there. So I put that pin there, and then we'll go ahead and put a couple of clips on the outside. The only reason I'm putting the clips on there is to help keep it from sliding around so that it stays nice and folded. All right, so now she's gonna go sew all around this. Now, what I like to do is kind of put it, remember how we sewed it earlier, kind of upside down under the presser foot? We want to do the same thing, but I want to be able to see that pin. So I'm going to turn this This is another one of those funny things. I'm going to turn it inside out. We're going to go to the sewing machine and we'll line it up so that you can sew the line, okay? We're going to go to the sewing machine with it inside out and the pin is inside there. Okay? Let's go sew it. Okay, so now we're at the machine and the bag is inside out. I'm going to find that pin. I'm going to slide it underneath the presser foot. Move the magnet out of the way for right now. My goal is to line up the needle to where that pin is at, okay? I have that lined up. Actually be smarter if I moved it so that I could get the pin out. So we have it lined up right there where the pin is at. I'm going to take the pin away. So now where I'm lined up right now is where we want the line to be. So to mark that, I'm going to take this tape away that we were using before. I'm going to move it. So I'm going to move it so it matches up with the edge of that fabric, okay? So that's how you can know where to sew so that you are underneath that line, underneath the hole, I guess. I'm going to put the magnet there. So now what Peyton's going to do, she's going to sew it just like she did before. I might need to move that clip out of the way. And so just like she did before, in a small little circle, we have it kind of upside down onto the presser foot, and she's just going to keep it lined up to the edge of that magnet the whole time, okay? So just sew it carefully and move the clips up. You do want a back stitch, yep. Okay, so Peyton sewed around the whole casing. Now Peyton, go ahead and turn it right side out. So, and while she is doing that, I'm going to get the rope ready, okay? So in your kit, you have 2 pieces of rope. I'm just going to take the safety pin and thread it through. So the tape, we want to leave that tape on there because the string gets really frayed and it'll kind of just unravel. So the tape helps it from unraveling. So I just kind of have it slip through that tape there. And once Peyton gets that done, we're going to go ahead and string it through. So that's good enough, honey.
Okay.
That looks so cute. Okay, so we're going to take the safety pin end. I'm going to slip it through that hole. So those holes that we left at the top, this is when they come into play. So I'm going to slide it through there, and what we do is scrunch it up onto the safety pin and just kind of slide the safety pin. The safety pin is right here. I'm going to scrunch it up on there and just kind of wiggle it out, okay? Now sometimes when you're going through the part where the hole is at, sometimes the fabric might have gotten folded over. It might be kind of hard, so you just have to work it through. Kind of move it around the fabric if you need to. I didn't have any problems there. But on this end, I kind of like to put my finger in there. Basically, it's my goal just to get the safety pin back out. So sometimes, like right now, it's kind of getting stuck on the crease of that seam allowance. So, I'm gonna wiggle this out. Oh, I'm so close. So close, Peyton.
So close.
It's getting stuck.
No.
You got it. You got it. Yay. Okay. So now, pulling the safety pin out through the hole. Goodness sakes. This is a harder one, huh? It's getting stuck on the fold of the thing. Okay. Woo!
Yes.
Got it through. So what you will notice, the string enters on one side, wraps around, and comes out on the same side. So we went past that first hole. We're going to come over here, bring it down. One of these will loop through here. So we want one string to come through the tab. The other string's going to come over here, and that's where we're going to tie our knot. Now for the dolls that we have, we kind of have to make it kind of a smaller handle. So I'm just going to tie the knot right here, and I'm tying it just slightly, it kind of pulls it just a little bit. You can adjust this based on your doll and how tight you want it, but we have found that once we go to cinch it up, that is like a good length for the doll. So, all right, so now we get to do the same thing on the other side, okay?
Oh, yay.
Yay! Do you want to try it or do you want me to do it?
Oh, can you do it?
Yeah, this is the part that sometimes the moms or dads or sisters have to help, right? Or if you're in class, sometimes someone else helps besides me. A lot of times there's one person that gets it and the other ones are like, I don't understand. And you know what, I was going to point out that with Peyton, right here, somehow the hole got really small, okay? And that happens sometimes just because we're trying to leave a small space, and sometimes we get a little bit, we sew over the marking. So what I actually might need to do, we're gonna test it out. If it's too small, we just get a seam ripper and kind of undo some of those stitches. So we'll see if we need to. It might work. We're just gonna slide it through, and it seems like it actually might be okay, so I don't think I need to do any seam ripping. But sometimes I have to. It just kind of depends. We're gonna skip through. Remember how this side was kind of stubborn? We got it through pretty easy this time. Sometimes it just wants to act up. Take my safety pin out. See, that side went much smoother. Okay, so now we want to knot it so that they're the same size. So what happens, I'll just kind of fold it in half and just kind of try to match it up. That big safety pin off. So we'd like for the straps to be about the same size. And sometimes, usually if you do this class with me, I will put some fabric glue or something on it just to kind of help make sure that knot's not going to come undone. But you can see they're pretty much the same size. The one I just did is a tiny bit bigger, so I'll just tighten it a little bit more. All right, and now look at, woo! It's perfect for the doll. So just to finish it up, we're gonna cut off these ends. Make sure you're cutting the tail, not the actual backpack string. And like I said, if you have maybe some fabric glue or even just liquid glue, you could kind of put it on the knot just to make sure it's not going to come undone. But otherwise it's all done, ready for your cute doll. All right guys, I hope that you have fun making this. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.